Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Uh, it looks like most people have settled in, and so here we start. Please note that this is a Zoom webinar, and it is not possible to unmute yourself or turn your video on. The webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded soon on University of Waterloo Faculty of Math website for admitted students. If you have any question throughout this session, feel free to ask us via Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and uh, we will be more than happy to answer all your questions and queries that you might have through the webinar. We acknowledge that University of Waterloo is located on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. The University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nation that includes 10 kilometers on each side of the Grand River. Hello. Congratulations on your offer to be a Mathie at University of Waterloo. It's currently 9:30 a.m. in Waterloo, and we welcome you from wherever you are joining us this morning. I just wanted to start by introducing myself. My name is Pavak Vyas, and I work for the undergraduate admissions and recruitment department for Faculty of Math at University of Waterloo in Canada. I will be your anchor at the webinar. Welcome to this webinar on preparing for the university. We are aware that past 1.5 years has been challenging for all of us. Schools and university have moved to remote learning. Exams have been canceled or postponed or delayed. And amidst of all this, you are here at the doorstep of your university that probably is in a different country. You may have a lot of question and anxiety about how your university life is going to look like, what you will be studying, what will be the level of difficulty, how you should prepare for your university life. And to answer all these questions, we have organized these simple lectures with professors and teachers at University of Waterloo Faculty of Math. I'm joined by several colleagues of mine from Faculty of Math and University of Waterloo to answer some of your questions on admissions, courses, electives, how do you choose, residence life, finances, anything and everything that you may have as your questions for your life in university that starts in about a couple of months from now. Uh, so feel free to ask any questions that you have in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer. Today, we are joined by students from all across the world, from Canada, Bangladesh, Bahrain, China, India, Middle East, UK, and the US. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Just to reiterate and introduce University of Waterloo to you, established in 1957, University of Waterloo is ranked one of the top universities in Canada on several aspects such as scholarly research and publication, hands-on experiential learning, partnership with employers, and several other aspects. We are 6 strong faculties, 12 faculty-based school, 4 affiliated institution, and 100 plus building in a 1,000-acre campus. This makes us one of the largest universities in Canada that has over 48,000 students, 4,000 employees, and more than 190,000 alumni across the world. Studying at Waterloo is certainly a delight and a dream of thousands of students across the globe. Faculty of Mathematics at University of Waterloo is powerhouse of discovery and innovation. As North America's only dedicated faculty of mathematics, we make world-leading contribution and create and attract industry leaders with over $29 million of research funding, 280 full-time professors, more than 8,600 undergrad and graduate students, 45 different programs, 500 courses, and over 40,000 alumni members across the world. We are the largest faculty of math in the world. Today, I'm joined by Professor Robert Garbary. Robert did his PhD in physics at St. Francis Xavier University, Nova Scotia, and his master's and PhD in pure math at University of Waterloo. Robert has been a faculty member at University of Waterloo since 2015. And besides teaching first year and second year calculus, linear algebra proofs, Robert is also involved with high school outreach and evaluation and creation of CEMC contest. Thank you very much, Robert, for joining us this morning and taking time out of your busy schedule and interact with our students. Thank you so much. And I'll just stop my screen sharing here.
Okay, so am I coming in okay, by the way?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna try to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Is this working, the screen share?
Yes, we can see you.
Yeah,
And
I should say, I absolutely hate that picture that was just shared of me. We had a day where a professional photographer was hired and everyone had a professional photo done of them. And it's just, I absolutely despise that picture, but it's the only one that I have. So one thing I should mention is the webcam is here, but I'm looking at my monitor here. I prefer using a bigger monitor. So it's sometimes going to look like I'm not looking at you, and I apologize for that, but it's just because I am looking at my presentation. I also have on the microphone on this laptop is not great, so I use this ridiculously huge headset that makes me look like I'm a helicopter pilot. Okay, so I think I'm going to say a little bit about me, even though it's mostly just repeating what Pavic said. So I've lived in the Kitchener-Waterloo region for about 13 years now. People who live here, so Waterloo really has a twin city called Kitchener, and people who live here just say they live in KW instead of Kitchener-Waterloo. So if you want to sound like a local, you just say KW. And I love living in this area, by the way. It's I really like the region. I grew up in a small town in Nova Scotia. Contrary to what Pavic said by accident, I do not have 2 PhDs. I did an undergraduate in physics there at a small town in Nova Scotia. And then I went to University of Waterloo for graduate school. So that's a master's and PhD in pure math. And I've been sticking around ever since. So I've been a faculty member here for about 6 years. And so I mostly I teach for mostly first and second year courses. So roughly speaking, most of your courses will either be a calculus course, an algebra course, or a linear algebra course. The first year course you'll take, or most of you will take, called Math 135. It's called algebra, but I've always thought that's a really bad name for the course. I would rather we call it proofs. Okay, and it's a course about writing proofs and how to communicate mathematics to others. In the past year, I've had both some online and some in-person teaching. Okay, so last fall, for example, some of our first year courses, we had the option to take them in person, and I taught one of those in-person sections. Okay, so I've gotten a bit familiar. You can see behind me, there's this whiteboard, and I often use that for office hours, or if I'm writing tutorials, or just making a supplemental video for students where I move my camera, or I move the computer much closer in front of the whiteboard and just ramble on for 15 minutes and record it and then share it with students. And I'm also involved a lot in the CEMC, the Center for Education in Math and Computing, the math contest. So some of you may have ridden actually I think it was canceled. Anyway, some of you may have ridden the Euclid competition recently, or some of our contests in the past few years. I help come up with the questions that go on that and test the questions of others. So today I'm going to talk about 2 sort of general things. And so mathematical preparation and what I'll call lifestyle preparation. The mathematical one is going to be pretty short. And the lifestyle one this is something in the first term, this is something I tell all of my students, and it's just sharing it with you. So I'm going to jump in and just talk a little bit about mathematical presentation, and I really only have 1 slide about this. Okay, so first off, we know that this is not a normal first term due to the whole COVID thing, due to the pandemic. And it's okay if there are small holes in your knowledge coming into first year. Okay, that's going to happen with a lot of people, and it's not the end of the world. This is going to happen where there's going to be something showing up in class where it's maybe expected you know it from high school, and you maybe haven't seen it before, and that's okay. Okay, that's not a big deal. On the other hand, it's sort of it's your job to make it okay. It's your job to try to work to understand it. Okay, so again, it's okay if you see something new, but you're going to have to work at it. So what we are doing, and this is for all incoming first year students, is we have this online course. I don't know how you pronounce this, MFL 99. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. So it's called the First Year Math Readiness course. We've been actually planning to develop this for years, but when the pandemic started, this made it an extra good reason because we knew there would be even more disparities for incoming students, what their high school knowledge is. And let me tell you a little bit about this. So if you come here, you're going to be automatically enrolled, and it runs about the 5 weeks before the start of classes, approximately. Yeah, this is really, we're making you work before classes even start. So yeah, it's about 5 weeks, and it's designed to take around 3 to 5 hours each week over a 5-week period. But if you're a strong student, it would be much less time than this. It would be much shorter. There's no extra cost, so we don't charge you for it, and it's not mandatory that you do it, but we really recommend that everyone does it. Okay, and it covers the basics of the following areas. So inequalities and absolute values, square roots, radicals, rational expressions, then trigonometry, exponential, logs, polynomials, and some introductory calculus. Okay, so again, this is something that I think it starts on August 3rd. That's what the website says, and it's a series of videos and then quizzes. And again, it's not designed to be super hard. It's just designed to sort of check that you have a certain base level coming in. Again, you're automatically enrolled in it. You don't have to do it, but we really recommend that everyone does it. Okay. And again, if you go through this, I think we can safely say that your mathematical preparation should be pretty good. Okay, if you do this. Another resource, maybe I can link this at the end, is so that the CEMC, we have this courseware where we made a lot of online videos and exercises about the Canadian high school curriculum, which is sort of what we're expecting that you're comfortable with coming into first year. And a lot of the material from this MSL 99 course was actually just taking directly from the courseware. So if you want, you can jump into this. So if you just Google CEMC courseware, I don't know if you can click this link or not. And then you want to go through the grade 12 documents. Okay. So that's all I'm going to say about mathematical preparation. I mean, maybe a little bit more in the what I call the lifestyle stuff. Okay. But anyway, do this course. Even if you don't have to, I really recommend that you do it. Okay. So lifestyle preparation. So what to expect? So something I always tell my first year students, and this is not just to sound like a jerk, but maybe it comes off that way, is that I don't view it as my job to teach the material to my students. Okay, I really don't. I view it as each student's job to learn the material. Okay. It's your job to make sure that you understand what's going on and that you're comfortable in absorbing the material. Then what I do tell them, by the way, is what are my jobs? So one of my jobs, I do spend a lot of time trying to think of the best ways I can to explain the material, right? I'm not trying to confuse you, okay? But at the end of the day, it falls on you to make sure you understand things. So it's my job to come up with the best ways that I can think of to explain things. It's my job to help you if you ask for help. Okay, but again, I'm not going to tell you that you should ask for help. That's on you. But again, it's my job to help you if you ask for help. And it's also my job to help sort of make up assessments. So this would be quizzes or assignments or exams that I think do a good job of sort of covering the material and testing whether or not you understand it. So at least this was my experience in high school. Again, I haven't been in high school for 20 years now or something. But in high school, in class, we were given time to learn the material. Right? I would show up to a math or a biology class, and the teacher would talk about some things for 20 or 30 minutes and then give us some exercises or problems to work on, and the teacher would walk around the room and check how we're doing, and that was how it normally worked. This is not really the case in university. Okay, that we're going to be going pretty fast. Okay, and it's gonna seem really fast. I tell my students that I expect them to sometimes leave class feeling confused, that there's going to be things in class they didn't understand. By the way, that this is likely not to make a hint of difference to you, and it almost never does, but I tell everyone, ask questions in class. Okay, if you are confused about something, I promise, I borderline promise you that 75% of the class is also confused about it, and they're all too shy. Seriously, ask questions. Okay, I'm more than, like, if you tell me you're confused about something, I'm more than happy to try it again to find a better way to explain it, but it's on you to tell me that you're confused about it. Okay, so anyway, I say expect to sometimes leave class feeling confused. Okay, that's going to happen, and it's a totally normal thing, and that's part of, that is part of university. Okay. There's lots of sources available for help, but it's your job to seek help, right? So for example, I'm available to my students for they have questions. We have course notes, so like essentially the textbook. It is meant to be a good source for first year students to read it to help them understand. Classmates, you can sometimes chat with classmates. There's a tutorial center for first year students. There's all sorts of resources available to help you learn the material, but it's your job to decide whether or not you need these. Okay. So I say it's okay to leave class confused and you haven't done anything wrong, but if you're still confused a week later, that is when it is your problem. That is when I think you have done something wrong. So again, you might leave class confused sometimes, but you need to put in the time outside of class to work on the material and then try to understand it. Okay? And then they're either reading the book or asking for help or something like that. As far as study habits, I have students who tell me that they tried something for 4 hours or they studied for 4 hours and just don't get it, and I often really just don't believe them. Okay, and a habit I really recommend you are able to do is sort of when you're trying a problem or doing something is you need to be able to sit down and sort of really focus on something for 15 or 30 minutes. And when I say focus, I mean ignore your cell phone, turn off Facebook or WeChat or whatever other apps we use, and just sort of totally devote yourself to something and not be distracted. Okay, I overwhelmingly, I really think that a lot of students struggle with putting away their phone for 15 minutes when they're on their own, and I really recommend this is a habit you need to get yourself in. As far as first year courses, we're going to be giving you problems on assignments where you don't know ahead of time how to do it, right? Maybe there's an example in class that's kind of related, but not quite. But you're going to need to figure out how to solve the problem. Okay, it's not the first time you look at it, you're probably not going to know what to do. Okay. So expect to struggle with things. Okay, we are trying to challenge you. Okay, we design our first year courses. Again, you guys are very strong high school students with really high averages. We design our courses to be challenging for such students. Okay, we're trying to challenge you here. Okay, now the goal is that it's a challenge that everyone's able to overcome if they put the work in. Okay, but it's meant to be challenging. Okay, so again, expect to have a struggle. The struggle is good. Okay, the way you get better at pretty much anything in life is to put in hard work and to struggle with it. This is like basketball or a sport or playing an instrument, and the same is with learning new material. You challenge yourself, you struggle with it, and you improve. It's really easy, especially now that more stuff is online, it's really easy to Google something if you aren't sure how to solve it. Okay, this may give you the short-term benefit of getting marks on your quizzes or assignments, but the long-term goal of learning how to solve problems, you are far better in the long run if you don't Google stuff. Okay, that is, if you put in the time and you embrace the struggle. Okay, something I tell my students, so there's going to be in most first year courses either some assignment, weekly assignments or weekly quizzes, and they're not going to be worth very much of your final grade. And I always tell students that their goal should be to work on these problems and struggle, and it's okay not to get full marks, or it's far better to only get half of the marks on something but have really worked on those half of the problems, rather than to Google all the answers and get full marks. Again, you will do better in the course if you, even if you do worse on these assignments or quizzes, you'll do better at the end of the term, because you'll be able to handle the final exam, which is worth a lot more marks. Okay. um, yeah, so sort of the summary of all this is sort of, expect to be challenged, expect to struggle, but that's what's coming. Okay. I'm obviously trying to scare you all away here, it seems, right? So another common thing is that there's going to be not a lot of questions where the answer is, where the answer is sort of a final answer, where we're asking you a number, or we're asking you a yes or no question or something. The types of questions that are going to sort of, the most typical thing to say is, we're going to say, show that something is true. Okay. And your solution is sort of often a written document where you explain why something is true, and we're judging you based on how well you present things. Okay. Something I often tell students is that when you do an assignment, when you submit your written work, it should be a document like a job resume. And what I mean by that, it should be a polished document that you'd be proud to show others. Okay. So again, you want to, but anyway, we're seeing how well you write and how well you explain things, and not just looking at the final answer. Right. So I guess I already said that. Right. So other things. So that was a little bit about sort of what to expect in classes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of outside of classes, but still stuff related to university right now. So again, this comment about living away from home for the first time is maybe not relevant to you, but it will be in the next year or two probably. And regardless, what I'm going to say is still relevant. So you're going to have a lot more time freedom than you did in high school. Okay. Again, when I was in high school, I don't know, I showed up at 8:30 in the morning and I left, I don't know, 2:30 or 3. And during the time in school, I was told where to go. They told me what to study, right? I was told when to eat. Then I was given a bit of homework in the evening or something like that. Okay. You're going to have a whole lot of time freedom, way more time freedom than what you're used to. Okay. So again, some of these bullet points don't apply to you if you're living at home still. But the types of things, you're responsible for. So I mean, maybe you're doing your own meals. It's your job to make sure you get enough sleep. Again, I have lots of students who tell me that they stay up late playing video games every night, and well, hey, I always say I'm not the one trying to pass the course. Again, I really recommend you work on getting enough sleep. Again, I say going to class here, and then whatever form they take. I can tell you that students, if I am failing, so sometimes at the end of a term, I give students grades, and I do fail students sometimes. I can, in my experience, the students who don't come to class are the ones who are more likely to fail things. Okay. If class seems easy, you should come to class. And more importantly, if you are struggling or class seems hard, that is a good reason to come to class. Okay, even if you are struggling, it would be worse than not going at all. Okay, I mean, if you're struggling, it probably means you need to work more outside of class. But if you're struggling in class, that doesn't mean you should stop going. But again, no one's going to tell you, no one's going to make you go to class. Okay, that is, at least if you're in person for the first few weeks, there might be attendance taken, but in general, it's sort of it's your job to do these things. Okay, whereas in school, if you don't go to class, the principal is going to call your parents or something like that, and they're not going to be happy. I'm not going to keep track of attendance, and I'm not going to email your parents or anything like that. Okay. So then your coursework, again, there's going to be a lot of coursework outside of class time, and you're responsible for doing that. And again, this last comment partly depends upon whether or not you're on campus or not, but I say managing your social life, right? So university is an exciting new time. There's lots of new people and experience, and I would say this is an important part of university, and sort of again, this is a time that has to be managed. Okay. So sort of summarizing all this, learning to effectively manage your time is the biggest change you have to face in going from high school to university. Okay. I mean, that is the number one things I tell people. Okay. That sort of time management skills are you're going to probably struggle with them at first. And learning to get good at that is really one of the main things you need to focus on as first years. Okay. um, it's always going to feel like there's many different things you should be working on, right? You're going to have a calculus quiz on Tuesday and an algebra assessment, an algebra assignment due Thursday, and things like that. And you're going to have days. Maybe you have a Tuesday where you have 0 classes, okay, and no one's telling you have to do anything, but you need to be the one who sort of says, I'm going to spend an hour working on this quiz. I'm going to spend another hour reviewing course notes and things like that. Okay. So just sort of getting used to the idea that you're going to have a huge amount of time that nobody tells you what to do with. And it's your job to sort of properly allocate that time in order to succeed. Anyway, I think that was about all I had to say. I hope I haven't scared everyone too much. So maybe a little bit isn't such a bad thing. But I guess I'm going to turn it over for questions now. I don't know if anyone can click this link. This is the courseware thing I mentioned at the start. So I think Pavlik's going to take over again. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I will certainly. Yes. So thank you, Robert. It was really very interesting presentation, and certainly you have set the expectations right for the students that what is going to be their university life like. So I would invite questions from the students. If you have any questions for Robert, feel free to ask them. And I know first question is always a little difficult to ask. You are hesitant, but don't worry. Feel free to ask any questions. Here is Robert with you for next 15-20 minutes. Ask questions that you like. Uh, okay, so here is a question. There is a student who is asking, what will be the mode of examination these days when you are doing this online classes, at times asynchronous and synchronous? Are they like quizzes or multiple choice question? And how students are expected to take care
Yeah,
of this exam?
sure. So the answer is sort of all of the above. So in first year courses, some courses will have weekly quizzes. Weekly quizzes or assignments, and these are sometimes they're written things where you either write them or type them up on a computer, and you submit images of the PDFs, and we look at your work. Sometimes there'll be multiple choice quizzes where they're sort of short questions and you have to choose the right answer or multiple right answers. And sometimes there'll be questions where you actually sort of enter a number into a console, right? We say calculate a number and then actually enter a number. So yeah, so sort of all sorts of things show up. Again, someone asked about the asynchronous thing. Yeah, the way these things often work is that it's set up so you have a 8-hour window. Like you're only allowed to spend 30 minutes on it, but you're allowed to do that 30 minutes anytime in an 8-hour window. So something like that is pretty common for assignments or quizzes, and I guess for examinations as well. Yeah, so there'll be a big window when you can write it, but you're only given a subset of that time to actually write it, but you choose when you write it. I don't know if that's answered the question or not, but I also don't know what else to say.
No, I think that answers question very well. Okay, Raj Thakur is asking a question. What do you recommend any books to prepare for proof-based maths? I believe, there are also some questions that often comes to us as you expect students to prepare for the university in terms of some mathematical courses before they come,
Okay.
and some books and stuff like that.
Okay. So first off, was it Vraj, or I don't remember the name that you said, but going back to Vraj's question, so and partly what Pavlik said is we are not like, if you notice when I'm going to scroll, I think I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. One thing I want to point out that's missing here, and it's deliberate that it's missing, is proofs. Okay, that we are not expecting that you have a background in writing proofs coming into university. Okay, that we are assuming you're sort of starting from the very base level and everyone's starting at the same level. Okay, so if you do not have a strong background, that's okay. Okay, and indeed, this first year course most of you are going to take, Math 135, the goal of the course is to learn how to write proofs. Okay, and again, it's going to be struggling. But it's a struggle for most people at the start. But again, it's meant to be a struggle, and it's something that we intend for you to overcome. As far as a specific resource that introduces you to writing proofs, I do not have a good answer to that right now. That being said, if you want to leave your email in the chat, I will try to get back to you about that. But no, I do not have a good resource off the top of my head I recommend for trying to learn about proofs. But again, we're not expecting you to be comfortable with this coming into first year. So again, obviously it would help you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, Robert. That was Raj. Yes. There is one more question is, do you believe that the first year math courses are challenging online or just they are different?
Yes. I would say the online and on-campus ones I would call about equally challenging. You will be writing the same, there will be the same assessments for both of them. That is, that they're, so for example, first year, the proofs class this term, right? You have the option to take it on campus or take it in person. You will be doing the same assessments either way. Okay, and the material will be the same. There's not going to be a big, there should be essentially no difference besides the fact that you're physically in a classroom not. Okay, that they should be equally challenging and they should be the same course.
Okay. Shreya is asking, will we have tutorials, the course
Yeah.
tutorials?
So, oh, good question. So that largely depends on the course. Some first year courses have tutorials, some don't. What most first year courses do have is something called it's either called the tutorial center or they might have changed the name to the tutoring center, but this is a thing where it is staffed by either graduate students or undergraduates, and it's a place where you can sort of informally show up and sort of ask questions, and people are there to talk about it with you. Okay, and there will be both an online, I think there'll only be an online version of this, but on-campus students can use the online version. But yeah, some courses have tutorials, some don't, and it sort of depends upon the course. I would guess in first and second year that tutorials are never mandatory, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah. There are good questions coming in, so I'm just marking them that we'll be answering them live. Thank you very much, everyone. Keep sending your questions. We have another 15 to 20 minutes at our disposal, so feel free to ask any and all the questions that you may have. Next question is, are the first year courses marked on a bell curve? I believe they're asking about, do we have a relative grading or an absolute grading, and we try to fit in a bell curve?
So, okay.
Yeah.
No. Okay. No, it is never the case that we go into one of these first year courses saying we are trying to get a 65, a 70 average or a 73 average. No, we generally, we give the assignments and we, if an average ends up being much higher, we let it stand. And likewise, if it ends up being much lower, we would often let it stand. Okay, we do not try to do things. Now, that being said, the rough idea is that sort of a reasonable course average for first and second year courses is typically somewhere between the high 60s to high 70s. That's roughly the goal. But again, there's no sort of bell curve to make sure that happens. Okay, it's just we're not trying to get a 97 average and we're not trying to get a 53 average. Okay, yeah. But no, we do not actually enforce that the average has to be in a certain range.
Yeah, that's really nicely being said, because I know people come with a 90%, 85% average, and they get really shocked in the university when they are getting somewhere around.
And one thing, by the way, I often, I forgot, maybe I should have said this during my presentation, but something I'll tell my students, if you get a 75 or an 80 on a test, that's a good grade. That's fine, right? Maybe you want to do better, and that's great. But that if you get a 75 or 80, that's fine. Okay, that's a perfectly reasonable grade, and maybe you want to do better than that, and then I encourage you to want to do better than that, but that's not something to be upset about.
Cool. Uh, yes, we have one more question for you that comes from Vishesh. In general, how many assignments we will receive in a semester, and how many hours, average hours, for study
Right.
are required?
Okay. Fair question. So my impression with doing first year courses here in the last 5 years has been most first year courses have some type of assessment. So maybe it's a quiz you do or a written assignment that's sort of due each week. And each one of these is, and so sometimes some courses might have a weekly assignment and a weekly quiz. Okay, but the intent is that on these things that you probably spend about so the assignments, for example, it is intended that you probably spend about 3 or 5 hours working on a given assignment total. Okay, and for the quizzes, even that they might only take 20 minutes to write. But yeah, so let me try to say this differently. So besides the time you spend in class, I tell my students that I expect them for each hour in class, they should probably be spending approximately about another hour outside of class checking that, going over the course notes and checking that they're comfortable with stuff. And then that the assignments are expected to spend, I don't know, around 3 to 5 hours on each of them, something like that. Again, it largely depends upon the course about how long you spend on these things. Okay. Yeah, but like I guess, like saying differently, even though you're going to be in class for, I don't know, somewhere between 12 and 15 hours each week or something like that, we are giving you more than enough stuff to spend a lot of the week working. Okay, that we are giving you things to work on that should take up most of your time.
Um, there is the next question, which I also know a little bit of answer about, so I can also say. The question is, would it be a good idea to do some preparations or practice before starting a math course? If so, what would be? And I can if you permit, I'll give
Go
you
ahead. Yeah.
a quick answer for it, and then of course you can elaborate it. So yes, it's certainly a good idea to prepare for your math courses, brush up your math skills before you land in the first year class. And where do you do it? Of course, there is a host lot of material on CEMC's website, past Euclid papers and stuff like that. That certainly helps you sharpen your math skills. And now, Robert, to you, you can you can tell some more about it.
Yeah. So it's absolutely a good idea to do some more preparation in advance. I I guess the only thing I would recommend. So again, we have this MThel 99 course that you gain access to at the start of August. But again, if you do that, you will be just fine. Okay. Again, I don't have any recommendations to do besides that, but I really recommend that you do that MCell stuff. And again, most of the material comes from this link. I'm not sure how to link it in chat, but if you just Google CEMC courseware, you will get this website. Okay, but again, if you go through this, you will be more than prepared coming into first year university.
Cool. Thank you so much, Robert. These are nice questions, and you're
Yeah.
giving pretty elaborate answers to
Yeah.
them. So the next question for you is, how big is the jump between high school calculus or math in general uh, to the university calculus or mathematics courses?
Okay. So there's two different parts. Okay. So there's I want to be okay. So it is a significant jump. Okay. You're absolutely going to find it to be a significant jump. Okay. This is partly because the shift is going to go for, like, again, I'm generalizing maybe a bit too much here, but in high school, a huge sort of the type of things you're used to is just giving an answer. Okay, and maybe you have to show your work, but the goal is to give an answer. And a huge part of what you're going to see in first year math is sort of you're being graded on how well you explain things. And students really struggle with this. Again, it's intended that we do struggle with it, and that's part of what first year is about. But again, I think most people find it to be a pretty significant jump. And again, it's going to be challenging, but that's a good thing, and it's meant to be a challenge that you can overcome. Okay. Like in terms of calculus, for example, a huge amount of it, like if you took high school calculus, most of it was probably just you calculate, you learn rules for taking derivatives or taking antiderivatives, where a lot of work is going to be put into saying sort of formally what limits are, and that this whole epsilon delta thing, which is going to be really scary to most of you at first, and you're going to struggle with it a good amount. So anyway, yeah, expect a jump, but it's meant to be one that you can overcome with if you put the time in.
Yeah. Basically, start putting time at it.
Yeah.
The next question is, how relevant are the first year calculus and proof courses to upper year required courses, especially for computer science?
Okay, so I'm not comfortable answering the question for computer science specifically. Okay, I've been offered before, but I've never taught a first year computer science course, and I have a very weak background in this. But as far as the math faculty goes, the first year courses are absolutely essential. And in second year courses, it is assuming you know the stuff from first year, and in third and fourth year they're going to be assuming that you know the stuff from these earlier courses. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so yes, it is relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would recommend the people who are looking to find out some computer science information and courses. We are doing another great webinar on May 28th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and May 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time with another advisor and lecturer at computer science, Jeff Avery. So if you have not signed up, and if you would want to do that, do sign up for that for all your CS questions. And it's going to be the same session like this where we are more focused on CS, and we'll be happy to answer those questions there. Uh, Next question is, I'm sorry, I'm just missing a track a bit. Um, yeah, that is Lucy is asking. I took University of Manitoba's first year linear algebra and calculus courses this year. How does that compare to Waterloo's first year courses?
Okay. So hi there, Lucy. Short answer is I don't know. Okay. The general thing is if you spent if most of those courses were doing calculations with numbers, then it's going to seem a lot different here at Waterloo when it's more proof based. If most of the course was writing down proofs, then I suspect it's pretty similar. But I'm not sure, and I apologize. But I'm not sure what exactly they do in the first year courses there.
Yeah, I believe, matching those course outlines, you can't do it unless you have it on your hand. Perfect. Um, would the practical sessions will be run through the virtual classes if it is possible? How does that
Well,
work?
practical sessions.
Sessions, yeah.
If I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Can the wording be clarified a little bit?
Uh,
Does practical mean practice?
I believe there are, if they have some lab courses or something like that, is what they are asking about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm not sure how things like that are going to be included, because we don't really have those in first year math. So I'm not totally sure.
Mhm.
But one question that I think you made a skip by accident that I just mentioned is someone asked if they can take the MCell 99 course online. And the answer is, well, not only is the answer yes, it's that you can't take it in person. It's only online. Okay, that this thing is only done online, and when you on August you'll gain access to it on your university website, and you only take it online. Because I'm the one who took up that question, I should also say thank you, Robert. It was a very informative answer, and you did a great job answering it. Anyway, I'll turn it back over to Pavic now.
Thank you indeed, actually,
Yes.
Robert. That was really nice.
Yeah.
Uh, Someone is asking if I did not score a 70% plus in Euclid, can I still take some advanced math courses?
Short answer is I'm not sure. I've actually never taught one of the advanced courses before. I was offered once, but I thought I was too busy. Um, The general that you would need to get, you would need to actually email the instructor and ask for permission. I think like you would actually need to file an override. So short answer is I'm not sure.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah.
And yeah, Krish is asking, uh, they get an idea about an algebra, but what do they expect in a first term calculus? If you can elaborate a bit more.
Okay. So right. So if you took high school calculus, you probably have used the word limit before, right? You talk about limits and then you talk about derivatives, and the derivative is a special type of limit. The major, sorry, one second. A major thing you're going to see in first year calculus is sort of the so-called formal definition of a limit, where you precisely say, when you say the limit as x approaches 3 if f of x equals 7, there's a very precise mathematical meaning to that, and you're going to talk about what that is, and then you're going to prove things using this definition. So the biggest change, and you can Google this if you want, epsilon delta definition of limit. So epsilon delta, though those are Greek letters, but epsilon delta definition of limit. That's going to be the big thing, which you probably haven't seen in high school before. So I mean, there still will be stuff about calculating derivatives, but that's going to be a very small part of the course, and it's much more going to be a huge amount of this is going to be proving that things are true using this epsilon delta stuff. So if you want to learn more about that, that's what you should Google.
Perfect. So they have another answer. Okay. One question that I have, and we commonly also get on students asking us, is about equipment. So Misha is asking, should I be purchasing a graphing calculator in the first year? Is it not required, or is it suggested? And probably also maybe if you can talk about certain mathematical softwares or computer configurations that they should be buying in a computer.
Okay.
Or something like that.
You absolutely do not need a graphing calculator or any fancy mathematical software. Okay. I recommend that students have a handheld calculator that can add numbers or divide numbers or tell you what take a logarithm or things like that. But you absolutely do not need any sort of fancy graphing calculator. Okay. It's worth saying, by the way, that we design all the first year assessments. Again, this partly depends upon what courses, but like all our exams are designed to be done without calculators, for what it's worth. But no, you absolutely don't need anything like that. In terms of what you're going to need is, I mean, if you're doing online, you're going to need some sort of way to connect to these online, Zoom sessions or similar software. For example, so online courses are sometimes done in things called Bongo or Teams, but that's all stuff that you will get. You don't need to get that software yourself. It'll sort of just be a link that you click on. But no, I would say you should have lots of pens and paper. You should have the ability to join these Zooms, these online class sessions. And I would say a very basic handheld calculator. That's pretty much it.
Oh, cool. We have, for now, we have probably exhausted all the questions that were for you, Robert. Maybe you get a quick sip of water. And yes, for the audience, Robert is still here for about a couple of minutes. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ask us, and we will be more than happy to answer them.
Are these all students who have already committed to coming, or they're still not sure?
More or less, they are committing to study at mathematics.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so they have the offers on hand, and they're making up their mind. What is their first year going to be like? What do we do at Waterloo in the first year, and stuff like that. Yeah. So Vishesh just clarifies his question about that practical. So how will practical sessions will we run on the classes if they're going on virtual?
So I'm not sure. What is a practical session? I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah. So what happens into certain schools is that if all the students are required to go to a laboratory or a lab session, and they do some experiments, or they are required to work onto certain instruments, and that is what they call as practicals. and the other are in classes chalk and talk, sessions. I guess that question comes from that angle.
Okay. So I've never taught a math course before where there's some kind of a required lab. Okay, where there's something like, besides there's a class where you show up for class and people, write on a whiteboard or show slides and you take notes. If that's done online, the two, sometimes it's done, so depending upon the format, sometimes it's done live, and sometimes it's just, it's only recorded, and then you can watch the recording whenever. But even if it's done live and some students join, they usually record it, and so you can watch the recording whenever you want.
Yeah.
And sorry, when I said pen and paper, if you have one of those fancy computer tablets you write onto, that's totally fine too. And I know
That is
a
a big
lot of students like
question
that. Sorry,
I saw by
I'm
medicine.
I'm old enough that I've never gotten good at using one of those, but they're of course totally fine. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
But yeah, like I'm not what you call a practical session. I'm not totally sure that the first year math courses have that sort of thing.
yeah. Perfect. Cool. Again, I think we have answered those questions. What is the difference between advanced and non-advanced mathematics courses?
Okay, good question. So short answer is, it's just there's a huge difficulty jump. Okay, the advanced courses are designed to be really, really challenging for sort of the absolute strongest students we get here. Okay, like, I mean, so for example, someone asked about the Euclid, right? And there are some people coming here who got a 90 or 95 on the Euclid, and it's these first year advanced courses are designed to be challenging for those students. So typically, approximately the same material will be covered. It's just the problems related to that material are much, much harder. Okay. Like another thing I'll say is that in the normal classes, so Math 135, the first year proofs course, for example, it is intended to be the case that if you sort of put in the time, that sort of essentially putting in the time and working hard is more than enough to do really well in the course. Whereas in the advanced sections, to do really, really well in the course, some serious mathematical insight might be required as well. That you might have to sort of think of you might have to think up some really hard solutions to stuff that's really hard to think up of. Yeah, so I'm not sure, but anyway, the material covered is approximately the same. It's just there's much, much harder problems you're expected to solve.
Yeah, we are again getting some really nice question, and this is probably,
Yeah.
even if I was a student, I would love to ask. So,
Yeah.
Askari Abbas is asking, what's the course that you have enjoyed the teaching the most?
That's right. So my favorite course is Math 135. That's most of you will take it in your first term. It's called algebra, but I call it a proofs class. And it's the course where, so the rough topics are sort of, I say number theory, which means properties of prime numbers and divisibility, and then a few other things. But it's really a course about writing proofs, and I really enjoy teaching proofs for new students and things like that. So anyway, Math 135, the algebra course, is my favorite course, and I've taught it. I teach it most years, and I really enjoy it. It's also a course that most students find pretty hard. But yeah, the proofs course.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There is a question by Arnav, and I will just rephrase a question. He's asking about your email ID, but I would say, how does a student approach a professor if they have any difficulty, or if they want to,
Yeah,
reach them out, maybe?
sure.
Yeah.
So I will quickly say I'm fine if any of you would like to ask me questions about first year, by the way, and maybe this is not the wisest thing for me to do, but my email address is rgarb as in Bravo ary at uwaterloo.ca. And if you Google my name, you should be able to find that as well. So if you have questions, I'm happy to. I don't promise to reply, but if I think I can give you a reasonable answer and I'm not too busy, I'll do my best to reply. So in terms of communicating, so if you're doing in-person classes, again, this is a bit harder because of social distancing and the pandemic, but often after class, there's a 5 or 10 minute period where I stay after each class and students come up and ask me questions. I have office hours where sort of I schedule 3 or 4 hours each week where students are allowed to just drop by and ask questions. These have been online the last few years, so I give you links like to a Zoom session that you join essentially. Um, and then I also tell students that if they can't make office hours or if they want help beyond the office hours, let me know and I'll schedule a one-on-one appointment with them. And I think you'll find that most of your first year instructors, the professors, are more than happy to give you one-on-one time. But as I said in my presentation, I'm not going to approach a student and say, hey, I think we should spend some time together reviewing this. I view it as your job to decide if you need extra help, and it's your job to ask for it. But yeah, but most first year instructors are more than happy to give you some one-on-one time if you have questions. And then, yeah, and also reply to emails if you want.
Perfect. And I guess this will be our last question for this session. How important is learning LaTeX
Oh,
to format
sure. Yeah.
assignments?
So short answer is not at all. Okay. So for all the stuff where you submit written stuff, so assignments or exams when you have written stuff, it is fine in all of our courses. And maybe there'll be an upper year course that says you have to learn LaTeX, but in the first and second year courses, handwritten stuff are fine. Okay. Now we expect you to write neatly and be legible. That being said, if you have some extra time, I mean, for what it's worth, learning how to use LaTeX is a really good idea. Okay, and I do think that it saves you time in the long run, and it does. The people marking your stuff will be much happier with you as well. Okay, but it is not at all required in the first and second year courses. But it's I would recommend. Yeah, it's a good thing to know. And you very well might have a third or fourth year course one day where they tell you have to write your assignments in LaTeX.
Yeah.
And they will give you some sort of training or documents about how to learn to do this. By the way, yeah.
Okay, I think that's it for now. We have exhausted all the questions that we had for you, and
Yeah.
thank
My
you very.
voice is exhausted. My voice is also exhausted a little bit, but yeah.
It seems we made you take a session right now. Already for an hour-long session with the students. So great, thank you so much, Robert,
Yeah.
for your time today with our students and
Yeah.
prospective students, I would say,
Yeah.
as yet. But
Yeah.
it was great
And
having you, and thank
yeah,
you very
yeah.
much.
I'm happy to do this. And one thing I'll say is that if you're undecided, if you come here, you're going to be challenged, and it's a good challenge. Okay, it's a hard first year, but I think it's a really good experience for what it's worth. Anyway, it was nice chatting with all you, and I hope you all have a nice day or nice evening, depending on where you are. Maybe if you were at this talk and I happened to be teaching you in the fall, let me know you were at this thing. Anyway, have a nice day, everyone.
Yes. Thank you so much, Robert. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us. We are doing a lot of sessions in coming days. One is certainly that you shouldn't miss is you at Waterloo Day at University of Waterloo. We are doing where you will be able to meet again the professors, the advisors, the students. If you have questions about your co-op residences, I think that's an unmissable opportunity for you to attend those sessions. If you have joined uh, this session late, or if you want to know much more about it, we are going to put recording of this session very soon, so feel free to access this session again. However, the recording will take about a week's time to come up on the website, so just stay tuned. You still have a lot of time to view the recording and listen to all the good piece of advice that Robert shared it with you. And yes, that concludes this session. Thank you very much for joining. It was indeed a matter of great pleasure to have you with us, and to all my panelists as well. Thank you so much. Um, Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you at University of Waterloo campus someday. Take care. Bye-bye.